Hi, everybody. It's your usual boring presenters, Ian and Cole, exciting presenters for Cole's case anyway. But we also have um, Andrew Hollier,
Yeah,
Andrew Hollier with us today, um,
Special
who
guest.
and uh, we we thought we'd invite Andrew to talk about atheism and the trends in atheism for younger people. So I thought we'd begin by discussing some of Andrew's background and experiences, if you're okay with that, Andrew.
yeah, sure. So essentially, I grew up as a Catholic, not really all that hardline Catholic, when I was quite young and transitioned to an atheist around, I was around about 15. When specifically in a year 9 science class, we were talking about the theory of evolution, and one of the other students asked the teacher how they were able to justify believing in God and evolution because they're contradictory. And the answer was God created the Big Bang. I essentially looked at that and went, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so from there started a journey of going, well, let's actually critically analyze this and look at, well, does this actually make any sense at all? And from there transitioned out over the next probably 2-3 years into being quite a hardline atheist by the time I was sort of 19, 20, involved in both the Sydney Atheists up in Sydney, and then as I transitioned down, sort of Canberra Humanists, and now the Melbourne Atheists.
Yes, and relatively recently, was it the first time I saw you a couple of weeks ago? Was that the first time?
Yeah, it was last month was when I moved down from Canberra.
Okay. Um, the experience in your hometown. What I mean, in my case in Toowoomba, it was pretty oppressive
Yeah.
as far as having people to chat with.
So when I hit sort of probably just when COVID started, so we're talking about 6 years ago now, I moved from Sydney to Wagga for work, and because it was sort of that start of COVID, I didn't really want to be in a large city at the time, especially working in healthcare. I thought the idea of getting out of Sydney was probably a good idea. And that meant that I left the New South Wales Humanist Society pretty much behind, as well as the Sydney Atheists. Going to a small country town like Wagga of 65, 70,000 people, there's not like an atheist group around. There isn't other people that are openly thinking like you. You can get a feeling of being far more isolated, especially during COVID, which is It was compounding on top of you can't go out, you can't go anywhere anyway, and even if you could, there's no one here. There,
Mm.
there's 25, 30 churches in town, but no group for someone exactly like you. And so having to sort of work within that society, and I would almost say not, especially to begin with, not be like as hardline openly atheistic, um, because you just don't know how people are going to react in a country town.
Well, anywhere really, yeah.
Well, exactly.
But especially, yeah.
Yeah. And especially out there, it's very much known as a very, very conservative area and part of the world. So, yeah, but I did meet some people out there that were actually really of a religious background, and we had some very good discussions in places that we maybe shouldn't have, but it was a bit of fun. Anyway.
So when it came to, like you told me before that you've had some debates.
Yeah.
And so was that before or after Wagga?
So that was before. So that was with the Sydney Atheists. We did a debate with the Islamic Society of University of New South Wales at the uni there was probably around 2018. I was involved in that, and then it would have been around about the same time the Seventh-day Adventists. We were doing debates up there as well, and that obviously involved a lot of work to prepare for those specific discussions, and those discussions could get quite heated, to be honest, as well. Just because you're dealing with people and you're dealing with their faith that they hold quite personally, quite close.
Also, the debating societies at universities are considered training grounds for politicians in some cases.
Yeah.
So you get sort of weirdo, So what were some of the interesting topics that you debated?
So you're testing my memory now. The Islamic Society, I believe, we were discussing whether the God of the Quran, like the evidence or the demonstrated evidence of God in the Quran, and then with the Adventists, I believe it was something along the lines of, could you like, where do our morals come from? Where do our ethics come from? Do they come from a God? Do they come from elsewhere in society? And obviously we are taking a side of that ethics have nothing to do with religion. It's more to do with societal norms, among other things.
Okay, so that it's very sensitive these days talking about the two other Abrahamic religions, and I've been accused of favouring Muslim religions, but I believe I'm even-handed. But I think even just if you, I don't want to get too far into that. I was going to say, if you consider the Bellflower Agreement to be, if you consider that to be viable or defensible, what has happened since then started in 1948.
Yeah.
Not in 2017 or whenever it was.
Oh no, and I mean, even going back before that, you've got, that specific area has been fought over since the dawn of these religions.
Yeah.
In
So,
terms of, the Crusades, and we go back further.
and there's terrorism on both sides.
Oh, exactly.
That's
And
got to be said. And it's becoming, don't you think with younger people, that's becoming obvious?
it is. And also the invention of TikTok, which meant that most people sort of in their 20s now are getting their news from TikTok. They're not getting the news from traditional news sources or from the internet. So your traditional media companies aren't able to have the same level of control over the narratives they used to have, which is why you're seeing the anti-Israel protests coming out with a lot of people who are in their 20s, because the news is coming directly from the source instead of being filtered through a large media conglomerate. And I think that's there's been positives and negatives to that, though. With
obviously, there's room for conspiracy theories.
And who doesn't
But
love a good conspiracy?
I do. The fruitier, the better.
Exactly.
But I have, I would wait to get the latest copy of a book by Noam Chomsky to find out what had been really happening.
Yeah.
Now it's all day, every day, real time.
I'll just go on to Donald Trump's Twitter and he'll tell you exactly what's been really happening.
Yeah, okay, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Glenn Greenwald, Chris Hedges,
Yeah.
Some amazingly, very, very strong and open people, and a testament to freedom of speech in the US,
Oh, exactly.
which Colin and I have argued, but I think it is a testament to how long that's going to last. Did you hear what Starmer did, or what he's proclaiming he will do this week?
No?
Is he? Well, I know he's fighting not to step down as prime minister. Um, the guy, I can't think of his name now. Yesterday won that by-election in the UK to try and depose him, essentially.
He announced that they're going to ban anyone under 16 from
Social media
accessing
bans.
social media.
Oh, so essentially the same thing we're trying to do here. That
Well, we were the test case.
And the
Yeah.
states are doing that too now, or they're trying to introduce, or they will introduce it.
And it's, the little kiddies. Yeah.
Such a spurious argument. Well, it's not even an argument, isn't it? It's just a claim.
They're afraid the little kiddies. Well, it's more than they're afraid the little kiddies will learn about the world. It's also a means of leaning on people.
Yeah.
Not just people under 16.
Well, it's also contributing to, if everyone has to register their name and birth date with an American corporation that directly links into a Palantir database, and then you put up a post saying "fuck Israel," then when Palantir are looking, or the US government are looking for enemies of the state, which includes anti-Christian or anti-Israel
That was
sentiment.
heavily air quoted, I imagine. Okay.
Well, but the reality is that we're now having to transfer data. I mean, Albanese's in some sort of negotiation about transferring biometric data of Australian citizens to US databases. I worked the other day, like our records are stored on AWS servers, which means that essentially at any point in time, the American government can say, "We want."
And when they talk about privacy laws, they aren't talking about non-American citizens.
Yeah, and that's been disturbing too. Is like, even with Dario Amodei, like, you can't use it to target people with a person involved in the loop, and you can't spy on US citizens, but the rest of the world, it's fine. It's just anyway. I'm on my soapbox. I'll get off.
Right, Colin.
I did have.
Okay,
so
were you cognizant of the influence of the four horsemen of the apocalypse? Was it four? Of the anti religious apocalypse, the global atheist conventions in Melbourne?
So not so much the conventions, but I did follow Matt Delahunty, Aaron Raw, and Seth Andrews, who were the when they did their Unholy Trinity tour, both of Australia as well as the one in America. And at that point in time, I was listening to a lot of those guys' stuff. So I was a big fan of them, and they were sort of, I'd say, quite big influences on sort of the way I viewed atheism at the time, and I still actually do view very similarly. And I did attend one of their talks when I were in Sydney at the Seymour Centre, which was quite interesting because I believe it was Aaron Raw did a discussion or presented his case based on God, but he played the character of God. And so he did that in Sydney and Melbourne, but then he reversed that in Brisbane, I believe, or one of them. Anyway, he had the two talks, and one of them he presented in one of the cities, and the others in the others. And it was very interesting when you listen to him, both of those talks, how the same material is presented in a very different light. Essentially, it can't be a mistake because I'm God and I'm perfect, and therefore everything I did was correct. Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, but I didn't actually attend the any actual conferences. It wasn't really a thing that I was aware of, to be honest.
Yeah, it was very strong here.
Yeah.
We had what we call Jeff's Shed, the Melbourne Convention Centre,
Oh, yeah.
after the illustrious Jeff Kennett.
Mhm.
There's a story there, but and it was packed and it was huge. Like it's got 10 entrances into it. And there were young people there,
Yeah.
like, you know, young guys, young women. Outside there were protesters. There were these Muslim guys preaching, trying to stop us from going to hell or whatever it is. And at one point there was an anti-protest, and a couple of lesbians were kissing in front of them, which was sort of yay, it was amazing. The whole thing was so empowering and positive.
There was a real vibe. There was a real vibe back then, wasn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, real
Absolutely.
confidence.
And I wonder what's happened to it. Now, of the Four Horsemen, I used to listen to Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah.
And his clipped way of presenting and his knockdown arguments for atheism. And then the guy turns into a pro-Zionist almost. Our shared Judeo-Christian values. Yeah, so much for being a horseman of the atheist apocalypse. So I just wonder if it's died down because there wasn't a leadership, or is it that it wasn't cool anymore?
I think to a degree that's true, and I think also, like, COVID, I think also had a role to play in that sort of thing, because when we went into lockdown, especially in Sydney and Melbourne, which were the two biggest areas for atheist groups in Australia anyway, that sort of killed a lot of the momentum of what we were doing. Like, I can speak to Sydney atheists more than Melbourne, but we were back, 2017 through 19, we were having monthly talks at a club in Redfern. That club now closed down because of COVID, and we now they didn't have a venue to have the talk, so they now just do it like we do down here, a pub meeting once a month, which is a very different environment, and sort of, getting your message out there is not really as easily done now. You don't have that sort of sense of community, I think. And so therefore people coming through, when you're 18, 19, 20 and exploring things at university, there's a lot of, different groups you can go through for your religious affiliation, but there's not the same degree of sort of atheist groups out there for people that sort of are sort of appealing to them. And so it's, even though I happen to believe that most people are at least agnostic to religion, they sort of don't really care. I don't know that there's sort of the leadership within the movement to really keep things going.
Yeah, I think personally, I don't know what you think, but I think it's not just that it's not cool. I think they're still there, all these people.
Oh, they're still there, yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, they do need something to coalesce around, and that did sort of evaporate a bit for various reasons. I hadn't thought of COVID. Don't you think it's still there, though, that there are a huge bunch of young people, probably because of the internet, who are seeing through, let's face it, the lies of the church, right?
Yeah. I do. So, like, as I say, I think most people are agnostic, especially young people. They sort of don't really care too much about it, but you have, like, to me, sort of that hardline, religious group, the fundamentalist religious like Hillsong, those sort of people that go to those sort of churches, and those churches are appealing to young people. They're playing rock music. They're loud. They're open.
Heavily funded, and
yeah, heavily funded. But you walk into a Catholic church on a Sunday morning, and you're going to have your room full of 75, 80-year-old grandmas and no one else. In a lot of occasions, I also think that the churches do a really good job appealing to sort of immigrants, because they offer things when you first come out here. They offer that communal group that really atheism doesn't have that sort of setup, because the nature of atheism is that we essentially agree there is a lack of evidence for God, but outside of that, what do we actually agree on? Because you've got humanists, you've got other groups that again don't actually have the same sort of agreements, and so therefore to have that one sort of platform and that one sort of area as well, if you don't have like a church or humanist house in Sydney or wherever where you can congregate, then you're forced to do everything online, which again is a way of creating community, but it's not the same as sort of going and sitting down at tables together and discussing.
It is very sad that we don't have places where people can meet. I was just trying to look up the source for the phrase "anarchists stick apart." So it's a bit like that. Atheists stick apart. Have your own thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And because as I say, we agree on what we don't believe, but we don't actually agree on what we do believe in a lot of occasions.
There are so many differences. Yeah.
Is that about us honing our communications though? Because we may agree that we don't. We agree with what we like. It's a boring conversation between atheists. Do you believe in God? No.
End of conversation.
End of conversation. But what am I saying? And I know there's a reticence or reluctance to be critical of religion, but really, when you look at a book like The Secular Economy, Max Wallace's Secular Economy, or The Purple Economy rather, we miss out on all these opportunities for organising because we don't benefit from, like, if you want to set up an employment service, you'll get your fixed hourly rate from the government, you charge your billable hours at $70 an hour or whatever it is, and you don't pay any tax because you're operating as a not-for-profit. Or if you want to sell cereals into Woolworths or Coles or whatever, we miss out. Like our town is, I don't know, 4,500 people. We got a church, it's Anglican. They run after-school care. They run meetings on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, Friday night. They have a youth group. Saturday they have working bees. Sunday they have 2 or 3 services and a late service. Like, things organised around it because people with kids, whether they're religious or not, it's like, well, it'd be good if the kids could go somewhere till I finish work. It's 5 o'clock or get home at 6 o'clock or whatever it is. We don't have those facilities, because we've never been advantaged like that.
Interrupt a little bit. On youth groups, we don't have facilities for young people to get together and meet each other.
No,
really not.
No, churches.
And I was, when I was younger, I was involved with DMLA, which is crazy organisation. But we got to go out to country dances and stuff. It was wonderful, really wonderful for young people to get together. What do you do as an atheist? Go to a club and the music's too loud to talk, and it's all there. It's all designed to make you spend money on booze.
Yeah.
And
the same with the chaplaincy program. I mean, the chaplaincy program, as it worked up here at the local high school, and I know I've told you this beforehand, but there's one organiser who organises about 20 schools, and I don't know what their annual budget is now. It might be 50 grand or 60 grand or whatever per school per year. And so they have one organiser, and they put together these little brief programs, and occasionally they'll get a volunteer to go and stand at the gate and greet people. They stated openly that it was not here in particular, but within their networks, it was the Anglicans, I think. Can't remember her name. They saw it as a mission field. They saw it as an opportunity to identify children at risk. So they're building. This is Palantir of the 1970s, 1980s. You know, the Christian right were essentially building huge databases of people and families and networks and leveraging it. You know, we haven't got that opportunity. Like to go in and get a job as an atheist chaplain. Up here, you'd have to sign up with the Pentecostal church.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You know.
Well,
and
yeah.
You mean pretend you were Pentecostal?
Well, I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I couldn't.
Yeah, I believe. Sure.
Well, you know, I have. I was talking to a guy from Iran, and I was saying, if they're pointing a gun at you, as an atheist, it's their problem. Just repent and live for the next day. You know, like Galileo did. You know.
I know, I get that, but this isn't a gunpoint. This is
not a
government
gunpoint.
administered funds.
This is exactly the opposite. It should be in a free society.
Yeah. You know, so, and then I saw the letter, the communication with the RSA recently. So the Catholic bishops reached out directly to Albanese to challenge the changes in the census, which the ABS had essentially agreed to. They were just doing their final pilot, and it never happened. So we'll go into the census again this year with, what religion are you?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, and
loaded question, really.
Well, exactly. It's a loaded question, and it's also speaks to sort of the money in, you know, these groups are funded basically as tax-free entities, right? They run as tax-free entities, but they don't have the same level of paperwork. They're not required to report to the same degree as another non-profit. So, you know, you're dealing with a two-tier system that is benefiting churches and making it more difficult for atheist groups and just non-religious groups in general to try and function and organize in that way. Also, the fact that, like, we are a diaspora that tends to, you know, not necessarily like to align with a specific set of principles, because, I mean, you know, you talk to two atheists and again, you'll get an agreement. We don't believe in God. Everything else is on the table. Let's have a discussion. And we love a debate, yeah. Right? We love, you know, those hardline discussions that.
Yeah, but if you're a non-believer, and let's leave aside atheism as a term, a collective noun, atheists, non-believers don't seem to recognise not only the advantage of the huge religious privilege within government systems, and that surely, even without having to form a belief about how we should distribute those, how we should work with, ostensibly after this census, 50% of the population are non-believers, 50% of the funding, which back in the day, you know, 15 years ago, Max Wallace suggested was about, the purple economy was worth about $50 billion. What would we do with $25 billion?
Yeah.
You know, and that's benefit that is being deprived of the children of non-believers who don't have a safe space to send their children for a youth group where they're not going to be indoctrinated or seen as a product for manipulate, like something to be manipulated, long-term financial investment,
or send their kids to a school with good funding.
Yeah, it impacts the education system. So, you know, Scotch College, I think last year or the year before, turned a profit of $22 million.
Jeez, yeah. And we give them money.
And we give them money.
Well,
you know?
we don't take taxes where we should be.
Which is essentially giving them money.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. And I mean, going back to the whole school thing, I was in Catholic education for 13 years, which again was considered a higher form of education. It was considered a better education.
Yeah.
Because
still is by some people.
But you had to sit there and you had to do a religious class every week. Sit there up until year 10, talk about the Catholic Church and Christian faith, and then only in year 11 and 12 did you get to actually explore other religions. And so that indoctrination, sorry, starts at a really young age. Yeah. Starts at a very young age, and they intentionally do that. Like, you know, we know that if you don't have someone believing in a God when they're 12, they're unlikely to believe it because the age of reason. Their brain develops enough to question it at that point, whereas before that, you don't question what your parents tell you, for example.
So is it in our messaging in that we're not making it clear enough that this is about us being disadvantaged and we are looking for equality for our children and ourselves in community assets? I mean, if they had to hand over half their property to us, that'd be a good start. But I can't see that happening.
No. I think it is about messaging, but I also think it's about sort of us being a collective. So you say that we're 50% of the population, but we don't use that power. And it's about collectivizing and actually demonstrating that, hey, we are a voter bloc that you need to take seriously in terms of.
Well, it comes back to that thing of we all think for ourselves. Whereas if you're in a religion, you have an accepted corpus of knowledge.
Yeah.
Which you either believe or don't. And even if you don't, you say you do. But we'll start to argue over the tiniest little thing.
Well, exactly.
But we still need, I think we still need that financial support that the religious groups are getting. And we need to see ourselves as enough of a group that we can argue for tax relief for atheist organisations.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, charitable atheist organisations. They do exist.
Yes.
They definitely exist on an international scale. So I think Cole's right. This is something we really should put our minds to, how we get funding.
Yeah.
I think we need to, like, I remember years ago when I first came up here up the hills, and I got swooped on by a woman called Magda. She also had a horse, and she, just.
Do I have to click that one?
Magda? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, I've told you the story, Ian, but you probably don't know, Andrew. And we'd been riding together, and she was involved in the church, and kept inviting me places. I'd only just moved up here, so I went to a few events, and then one day I was sitting on the back porch, and she said, "Oh yes, I had to approach the church council to get approval to do cross-gender counselling." So it's like, what, my counsellor? No mention of it. It's just this insertion into their life.
You didn't know you were being counselled, is that right?
No, I
that's
didn't.
An amazing story.
And it's just the machinations of these people. It still to this day astound me. But what I was gonna say is, every Saturday morning they would have a group of people up at one of the many St. Mark's, who would get together and just write grant applications, funding applications.
Yeah.
And I think we need to take a little bit of that on board, that we need to start churning through money, not only to provide opportunities, and Alice springs to mind, but, to be able to provide paid opportunities for people who are from a non-religious background to see opportunities here. I was involved with a job network provider, and some of the advice I got was the best thing you can do to get a job, Colin, is join a church. And they're getting away with that.
Mm.
It's a disgrace. Anyway. Again, off the soapbox.
Well, no, and well, I mean, not really though, because people coming out when they're sort of 18, 19, 20, and they're starting to look for employment, especially post-university, the competitiveness of that job market. If you sort of know somebody through your church who works for a specific organization, then hey, that's my door in.
Exactly.
Whereas as an atheist, you don't have that door in because, as we know, it's who you know, not what you know in most.
Yeah, and we don't have those networks. We've certainly got a lot of organisations, the Australian Atheists, Sydney Atheists, Melbourne Atheists, Secular Lobby, Australian Secular Lobby, Secular Lobby. It's like that scene from Life of Brian with the Palestinian Liberation Front.
The bloody secular.
That's us. That's us. I've got to say that under Meredith Doigan now continuing the Rationalist Society is still doing some very good work. They've got their stuff together. But they have a particular view of the world that I can't get on board with it fully. Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, mate. Go ahead.
Rather than speaking. So you said that you were about 15 when you sort of were in a science class and just God did the Big Bang, forget about it. Critical thinking, how does the Catholic education system approach taking a critical approach to, say, for example, evolution? And they say, look, we want you to apply your full critical skills. We do teaching and critical thinking and everything else. And at the same time, through indoctrination, they're working to undermine that. How do they reconcile that? How does that work?
I have the suspicion that they don't really recognise that. Like, they're given us a syllabus from, say, the New South Wales Education Department, and this is the things you have to teach. They teach them. But it comes back to that question whereby if that other student never posed that question to the teacher would never have had to give an answer of, how, because I don't really think they do. I think they're trying to sort of say, we're going to teach science because we have to, but we're going to work for 13 years to make sure that while we are teaching you the syllabus, underlying that is, remember, God exists, God created all of this, this is our fundamental belief system, you're a Catholic, we need you to continue to be...
You're a Catholic, he's the Pope, listen to him.
Exactly. Ignore everything else that you hear about us. We're actually a good group of people.
All right.
But
I was just going to say, and being an atheist in a Catholic system, did you feel on your own, or were there lots of atheists there that just really didn't say it?
I got a little bit rebellious when it came to when I first came out. So I sort of basically went to the you still had to go to mass, you still had to do all that sort of stuff, but I sort of just sat there and tuned out the entire time. And then whenever I had to write a sort of anything religious, I would sort of title it with something that was quite I would say not appropriate for the environment, and I got in trouble a couple of times for that off my parents, just going, you can't call your faith that. But anyway, but I do think it comes back to that, because they're still forced to teach a syllabus that requires you to teach evolution. They're having to at least agree, and I mean the Catholic Church actually does agree that evolution, and that is an actual accepted theory of how things actually happen. And so they're not quite as extreme as some groups, especially in America, where they teach young Earth creationism to students, which is a whole other topic. But because their syllabus is so structured, I think that they've been forced to reconcile with that and just go, look, this is basically just a story that we want you to take some moral lessons from. We don't take it so literally.
Okay.
The hypocrisy in that, when you get into detail, just enormous.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot hinges on evolution, doesn't it?
It does.
Apparently, they're not taught evolution in high school in the US.
No, they're not. Depends on the state, because state to state can be different. But certainly places like Alabama and the Deep South, they're certainly not taught. Evolution, there's entire lobby groups to ensure that doesn't happen. But the northern states, I think it's a little bit different. They tend to be a little bit more science positive, shall we say, from that standpoint.
Yeah, so it leads to 66% believe in angels, literally, and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And that's an older figure, but it's probably similar now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's all gloom and doom, though. I think there's a lot of interest with young people. And it's just a matter of getting it back into the limelight. As you say, the internet has really changed things for the better. Even on mainstream media, which is abysmal, there are shows like Hard Quiz where they make jokes about God not being a real thing.
Yeah.
And Jesus did that, not really, but and QI and so there's a lot of sources for people to start thinking for themselves. One of the problems with atheist groups is that someone new comes along and they're not love bombed, they're argued with.
Yes.
But the thing is, the people who are arguing with them tend to be much more broad-minded than the general population.
Yeah.
Because they've lived with being contradicted all their lives, right?
And much more accepting, I think, because we don't carry
Accepting,
those
yeah, that's the
biases.
term.
You know, we don't care about things like gay rights. Like it's just not. It comes. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any anti-gay or any racist people within the community. There are, but broadly speaking, in atheism in particular, it's just not part of the discussion because it's not something there's no agreement there. There's no point of agreement. There's no source of agreement. But I think when it comes to
there's no source of thinking one is better than the other.
yeah, we've got no doctrine to stand on, so it's not really relevant.
No, it isn't. Like we don't really have any skin in the game, I would say, where your sexuality and where you come from in the world really doesn't matter. The point is, how do you debate? Can we have discussions together? Because that's really all we're looking for. We're really, as I said, we're basically a bunch of debaters. We love to have sort of discussions on a variety number of topics. Myself and a friend of mine who's now in Egypt would sit there for hours and have debates on immigration. We're both atheists, but he's an immigrant from Egypt who was anti-immigration, and I'm not anti-immigration. And it was like we would have heated debates for 4 or 5 hours purely around that one topic that we, at the end of the day, didn't come to an agreement on. But that's not the point.
That's not the point. Yeah. It's having the discussion. It's airing the views. It's putting them out there for conversation. And I think we're very good at that. I think as a community.
I think we are.
Yeah. In my case, I'm not conservative, but some are, right?
Yeah.
But I still admire them because they speak out against all the slings and arrows that are against atheists in our society, and they have been all their lives. And I really admire them and get along with them. And I have views on lots of different things where I would disagree with you guys, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, continuing with that same train of thought on, I had a newer conservative in Canberra who was a One Nation hardline conservative, but had no religious background, and we would have hour-long political discussions where we would come to an impasse, essentially, where we're not going to agree. But the point, again, is have the discussion, try and challenge your own thought process.
I must admit,
Right.
I find it hard thinking, how could someone who is one nation, but I guess they're there, yeah.
Well, I mean, specifically, this guy was in the army and left the army and then was a small business owner.
Yeah,
and so was an orphan small business owner. Like,
yeah,
so he's had a very specific background that led
yeah,
to
yeah,
exactly who he was. Now, if you don't take the time to learn that, they can understand that, then you aren't able to have those sort of discussions with someone. And I think we sort of, as a broader community group, need to sort of figure out a way to have spaces to do that. Now, whether that be, online is probably where we do it most often. But again, like the Unitarian Church that we go to for our talks down here, is there a way that we can link in with, Melbourne University, Monash University, Griffith, any of those sort of places, and get people that are there to start to think, okay, well, here's a group of people that are outside of it, and you guys you're in the AI field. People in there who need a job when they're going out of uni or need advice, they can then come and talk to you. And is there a way we can get into these universities and open it up and do that?
I think
universities themselves, I don't know. I think sort of would need to start outside.
Yeah, but it's sort of
gain an imprimatur outside. Yeah. Is that even a word? Or do I just make it up? Okay.
That says what me writing an essay and make up word. That's fine.
No. I was just going to say, as you were talking about One Nation, I'd love to get into it, but it's too much of a tributary, I think, because Pauline Hanson's speech to the press club just happened this week.
Watch it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I had to record it because some of it occurred during our
world's
meeting.
Worst orator, but anyway.
Well, no, during my class on Wednesday afternoon. But I watched it, and the thing she said at the start, the popular stuff, that's going to get under the Liberal and the Labor Party under their skin, because they've been bullshitting to the average worker day in, day out, and getting worse and worse and worse. And that could win her an election, or at least raise her. She's definitely going to have raised numbers.
Oh, she will, yeah.
Yeah. God, can you imagine having her represent us at international conferences?
Well, the thing is that
G20, Pauline Hanson.
All the rest of her speech totally worked against what she was saying, because every move she's making is anti-worker, right? Anti-working class, whatever you want to put it. I don't want to sound like a Marxist, but kind of that's where we're going. Marxist. Okay. So she can get purchase, and then she'll do everything she can to add to the misery of the working class, of the average guy, let's say, the average working person, men and women. But boy, they're going to have to start to talk about how our living standard is plummeting. The Liberals and the Labor Party are going to have to start doing that. But like I said, that's a whole other thing, which we could talk about later, I think.
Yeah.
I do think that any step forward, and part of our problem is that we've had so many organisations like Progressive Atheists. I think it's a good name because there is that distinction that exists within. Like, if you get past atheism, then probably the primary divide will be left Marxist capitalist or communist, capitalist, whatever
Well,
it is.
it's
It's going to
weird
be
because
an economic divide.
it's 20th century propaganda, really.
Mm.
That's all it
Well,
is.
But what I was going to say is that the starting point is to get a highly functioning corporatized entity up and running with succession plan to bring people into, because then, for example, we could take on an intern in media and communications. We'd get funding for, start applying for grants. We can start collecting charitable donations. It's just a slog to go through all of the ATO stuff and everything else and make sure you get all of your Incorporation Act requirements
Try to
together.
ensure that you don't get someone like Sam Harris creeping into it and totally distorting it.
Yeah, and you can, and I mean, I suppose within your constitution there are ways to deal with that, without having to drip blood on a knife and on a stone and make a thing. But I guess, and that's true, I guess, of any organisation. The successful ones tend to be the hardest line ones. The Catholic Church, they're good till they, evict you. Well, no, it's not called eviction. What is it? Churches they have very, very firm rules, and you get to a point, and it's like, well, fuck off. You're never seeing your family again. You're never seeing anyone again.
Yeah.
Excommunication.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, so I think the step is to get us into a position where we can start to fundraise and start to look for government grants to be able to take care of even communications. To have someone who was just there day after day after day on Twitter in a paid role as a an SEO or whoever it is, just optimizing our communications and things like that. Plus building the networks. It's about networking, and I think the disadvantage we have is that I don't think I've ever seen a really successful, apart from the rationalists to a degree. The humanists have their meetings and that, but not really corporatized and out there and in the public face all the time and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's, and look, once you've done it once, I think the Pentecostal or evangelical churches in the US, you used to be able to download. They had a church planning kit, which was essentially something you printed out, and it was like 3 A4 ring binders, and this is how you start your church, and it has all your forms, has all your paperwork, has all your things, and that's a distributed network. It's like a distributed approach, which makes it easy for someone at the back of Burke somewhere to be able to download a folder of how to set up an atheist group in Burke. Yeah. I mean, it'd still tie back to the main network, but producing something like that, I think, could be hugely beneficial to us, that people in their own communities, if you've got just one person who's willing to download it and follow the steps, but to be able to
pick it up on the local library,
to be able to create that, you've got to go through the steps and document them first. And I think going through the steps and documenting them first would be a good project for us to perhaps look for funding for. But to do that, we've got to be an organisation.
I think you're right. I always feel guilty because I start to go, right, it's not my thing. But I'm sure there are people for whom it is their thing. And I hate the fact that it's not me, because I know you're dead right. We need that kind of funding. We need that kind of organisation.
I think you and I, the older generation, have got heaps to contribute to something like that, but I just don't see us taking the leadership role. I think it's something that we can do what we need to do to get it going. But really, when you talk about the committee and the roles within the committee and organisation structures,
I mean, there's still
that's
old
young
people are still very valuable. So
yeah, they let us hang around for a while.
The closer you get to retirement, the braver you get to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sure the young atheists
you get a gun pointed to you,
chairs on the porch.
Yeah.
We could sit there and rock backwards and forwards and complain about you.
Yeah, and be. We can complain about the state of the world.
And
about politicians and their tricks and their games. That to me is interesting. What's happening in the US is interesting to me.
Well, I mean, look, Hanson's come out here listening to a speech the other day. She's essentially borrowing the playbook of the religious right in America, which is essentially them as a powerful lobby within, as the Zionists are,
and even some of
within
Trump's
global markets.
and even some of Trump's tricks, like she brought out a toy bulldozer or something, So she's sort of copying his way of marketing himself.
And
The fact also,
Judeo-Christian society,
the fact that they're a bit stupid, or appear a bit stupid. In her case, I think is real. Doesn't hurt them because they look like ordinary people. One of my favourite politicians is Jackie Lambie.
Yeah.
She just says what she fucking thinks. Oh, I love her. Don't agree with everything, but boy, she's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went after her. Go on.
I think you're right, though, in terms of you do need that youthful exuberance of, almost the naivety to a degree, at least, that we can change the world, but that you have when you're first at university. You're 19, 20 years old, you've just come out of school and everything's brand new. And you haven't been kicked down by the world on multiple occasions yet. To sort of take that leadership role within the establishment of these sort of organizations and getting this sort of funding together.
Yeah.
By the time you hit your 30s, you're working a full-time job and you're, probably may have kids, you may have other things going on in your life. You just don't have anywhere near as much time to be actively involved in that sort of thing. But if it was already set up whereby, all I had to do was download, 3 A4 pieces of paper and fill a few things out. Okay, now I've established a group in my area, and then I can post it on, Meetup or whatever. And now we've established an atheist group within the small town. Name your small town.
Yeah, where it's easy for people to connect, where it's easy to catch up on a Tuesday night or whatever. Yeah, just because you can connect very locally. But so I think that's something worth pursuing.
No, you go. Sorry.
I think it's something worth pursuing, and I think if we were a church organisation, we'd be sitting around as a really interested group and say, all right, we'll start meeting on Tuesday nights to discuss this further and actually flesh it out, and then starting to really work our networks to find and I've got very little. I know I always speak really highly of Nicole Gray, who was ex-Muslim who joined Progressive Atheists. She was really active. She'd done a lot of work for Muslims who were leaving their religion. But there's a lot of young, active, interested people out there, and we need to be able to, I guess, come up with a formal strategy and start communicating it through our networks to try and open it up, the ideas up to as many people as we can, and really start building this sort of community that can, not with a particular goal in mind, but just to start building the networks for when we do need to act quickly. Like as at Progressive Atheists, we were trying to get together a voting card, where every member, someone would email a member and say, how would you vote on an abortion bill? How would you vote on this one? It never really kicked off, but it's something that needs to be centrally coordinated, just in managing the data inflows and the messaging and everything else. And if we can get together as an organisation, we can apply for grants to fund that. We can make the argument that we should get funding for these because we're underrepresented in community debates or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those issues are going to come back if Hanson gets in.
Well, exactly.
Or even gets more power.
Well, is a new church in Brisbane I saw this week who said, the Catholic Church are administering it, and they've said, well, we're not doing any abortions, we're not doing any abortion referrals. Public hospital, public hospital, yeah. And they're the administrators, and like, no, we don't do that. It's like, well, get out. Yeah. Get out of our healthcare system. Get out of our, like, why would you commit a child to? Why would the state allow children to be indoctrinated from their first day at school and provide funding for it? Like, we have a secular education system that doesn't indoctrinate people into this sort of hatred, and now we see the hatred emerging again. People hate Muslims. People hate Jews. Not that Jews have got anything to do with the Zionists, but totally disconnected. But yeah, you get these tensions rising up again that should have been put to bed 300 years ago. And why? Because people go to school and they hang out with people who go, yeah, no, it's absolutely definitely that 6,000 years old and anyone else is stupid and are an enemy. Othering is always a part of religious doctrine. We're good, them, they're bad. So it's just embedded in the mind of religious, of religious doctrine.
In my in my moods of being down about the world and being conspiratorial, I think there's an advantage for the powerful to divide us against ourselves.
Yeah.
And the internet is not doing that, and they're afraid of it. But someone like Pauline Hanson, it's obvious what she's doing is dividing us against ourselves.
Segmenting the market, marketers would call it.
Fragmenting the market.
Segment. You've got the anti-abortion segment, and you've got the no trans in library segment, and you've got the Nazi segment, and you've got to message them all differently. We should be doing the same. We should be treating it with the same professionalism.
Okay.
No. As far as not to divide and conquer, but to just get our messaging to the people who are interested in the message. I mean, Laura Kaput is Kaput, I think that's how you say it. With her work against the Jehovah's has been exceptional, just as a single activist out there. And I think that being able to platform people like that and give them the opportunity to pursue those really, really intense. I mean, she doesn't seem to have needed support, but it also means that her messaging hasn't been as effective as it could.
Well, it's been effective because she's been a hard worker. She keeps writing submissions to government.
Yeah, a bit like Fiona Patten in politics. She was a very effective politician.
Yeah. She was great. Yeah.
She's a Canberra girl. Do you know her, Andrew?
No. I was only there for 2 years.
Yeah. So, but just to be able to organise as a professional, the Catholic Church, probably, leaving aside the education system, it probably employs, hundreds of thousands of people nationally, and they're jobs that atheists still never get. Hi, I'm an atheist. I'd like to work in your intelligence department. No. So,
I think it's getting time to wrap up.
Yep.
If there's anything you guys would like to say, I'll finish with Andrew talking about younger people, if you don't mind, Andrew.
Yeah, sure.
But before that, Colin, anything you would like to add?
Oh, no, I think people are well aware of my views. I think I've stated them pretty clearly many times. So, yeah, no, I'm good. It was good. Mind you, it was nice to have you on, Andrew. It was nice to have this chat because I think as much as our 5 viewers, might be 6 this week if you watch it. As much as our 6 viewers, probably, they appreciate a guest.
I couldn't even find us. I did a search. I couldn't even find us before.
My point exactly.
2 secular dudes.
Exactly.
So
anything you'd like to say, Andrew?
I'd just like to thank you guys for having me on. And just basically from a perspective of someone who's sort of a younger atheist, I think that sort of being active within the community and sort of getting out there and getting back into going to pubs and going to these sort of events, like come down to the Melbourne Atheists once a month. They're a nice group of guys and women that head down there. And
Atheists in the pub in Elstonwick is enjoy it.
It's a great night. And I just think sort of know that as a younger person, you're not the only atheist out there. There are other people, and there are groups that you can be connected with. Have a look online. If you're in Sydney Atheists is a great group. Down in Melbourne, we've got the Melbourne Atheists. And yeah, just there is actual groups out there, and come out, get connected, and let's see if we can't sort of make some changes.
Cool.
Excellent. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. I'll see you guys. And thanks, Andrew, for coming.
No worries.
Really,
Thanks,
it's
Andrew.
really, really good. And it's not from little things, big things grow, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
See you guys.
All right.